Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are taking a really fascinating journey through two of the absolute most profound narratives found in ancient biblical texts, the calming of the storm and the feeding of the 5,000. We're going to trace a path directly from absolute chaos to profound peace, and from what looks like a hopeless lack of resources to just miraculous abundance. So get ready, because these historical accounts, they offer some seriously powerful psychological and spiritual blueprints for anyone who is navigating their own turbulent waters right now. Okay, let's dive right into this. You know that feeling when the math of your life just completely refuses to add up? Maybe you're staring down a sudden financial crisis, an unexpected health issue, or honestly, just the crushing anxiety of modern life, and you suddenly realize, I literally do not have the resources to survive this. It's that totally universal feeling of being stuck in a tiny boat while a massive, raging storm threatens to just capsize everything you hold dear. Well, today, we're looking at exactly how these texts offer divine solutions to those impossible equations. Section 1. The Storms of Life, Navigating the Tempests. When sudden storms hit our lives, and I'm talking about those immediate, terrifying threats to our peace of mind, it's incredibly easy to feel completely abandoned. And that's exactly how the seasoned fishermen in our first source narrative felt when a violent squall seemingly came out of nowhere on the Sea of Galilee. There's this stark dichotomy here that just perfectly captures the human condition. On one side, you have the disciples in sheer panic, yelling out, "Lord, don't you care if we drown?" It's that absolute helplessness you feel when you're wondering if anyone even sees your struggle. But on the other side, we see Jesus literally asleep in the middle of the chaos, who then wakes up and exercises ultimate divine authority with three simple words: "Peace, be still." And just like that, instantly, the violent winds and the raging waves are hushed to a whisper. I want you to listen to this incredibly powerful reflection drawn from modern seekers who were looking at this exact story. It says, "The waves don't win, the storm doesn't decide your ending. Jesus already did." The profound takeaway here is that having faith over fear isn't about the absence of storms in your life, not at all. It's about the presence of Christ right there in the middle of them. The tempest might be raging all around you, but you definitely don't have to face it alone. So, what does this actually look like for us right now? The sources we're looking at highlight some incredibly practical steps for finding calm in the chaos. Think about Peter stepping out onto the water and suddenly starting to sink because he got scared. Remember what happened? Jesus didn't hesitate. He immediately stretched out his hand to catch him. And that same psychological hope is available to us. You can pause, take a breath, and consciously invite God's peace into your situation to center your thoughts. You know, it really is an active daily choice to pick faith over the fear that's constantly trying to drag you under. Section 2. The Impossible Math, Facing the Problem of Not Enough. Imagine this. You're in a remote, deserted place, and the sun is starting to sink. You're standing there with a massive, hungry crowd. There are absolutely no nearby towns, and you have zero food. Look at this number, 5,000. The texts tell us there are 5,000 men in this crowd alone. If you factor in the women and children who were also there, historians estimate this was realistically a crowd of maybe 15,000 to 20,000 hungry mouths. The tension is just building here. The sheer scale of the need is specifically meant to completely overwhelm you. And then we get the disciples' calculation, 200. The disciple Andrew did the math out loud and basically concluded it would take 200 denarii. Just to put that into perspective, that was more than half a year's wages at the time. And that was just to buy enough bread for every single person to get one tiny little bite. It was a completely hopeless equation. So they finally take an inventory of the actual food they have on hand. And what do they find? Just 5 small barley loaves and 2 tiny fish. So the crucial point here is that Jesus already knew exactly what he was going to do. He intentionally brought his disciples right to the very edge of their own resources. He deliberately put them in a situation where the need was absolutely crushing, and their resources were, for all intents and purposes, zero. And then, right at that moment, he tests them with this totally impossible command: you feed them. Now, why in the world would he do that? Because, as the texts so brilliantly reveal, God does his absolute best work at the precise point where human ability completely runs out. Think about it. You cannot see a miracle in a situation you can easily manage on your own. You only see it when the math is impossible, and you are forced to rely entirely on divine provision. Section 3. A child's small offering, surrendering what we have. So out of a crowd of literally thousands,
The only person with any food at all is this unnamed little boy. And rather than hiding his lunch or hoarding it for himself in the face of this massive starving crowd, he joyfully surrenders it. But you have to notice this specific detail about what he surrendered: barley bread. This was not some fancy, expensive feast. Barley was the cheapest, coarsest grain available. It was basically the food of peasants and laborers. The sources really emphasize here that God consistently delights in using the small, the humble, and the overlooked things, the stuff the world would never, ever bet on, to perform miracles that just leave everyone completely speechless.
This quote right here really hits the nail on the head regarding the boy's offering. As long as the loaves stayed in his hands, they were just lunch. The moment they were placed in Jesus' hands, they became a feast. That is the profound lesson of surrender. Your limited potential, whether that's your time, your talent, or even just your small amount of faith, is only unlocked and truly multiplied when it is placed entirely into divine hands. Also, pay attention to the very specific sequence of actions here. The text tells us Jesus took the bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it. Now, those exact 4 verbs are used later on at the Last Supper. So this miracle out by the lake is essentially an acted-out sermon, quietly rehearsing the cross before it even happens. And notice this: as long as the loaves stayed whole, they didn't feed anybody. It was entirely in the breaking of the bread that the multiplication actually happened. It beautifully shows that through brokenness, life and nourishment are released to the world.
Section 4. The miracle of abundance, from lack to overflow.
The outcome here is amazing. The crowd wasn't just handed some meager little crumb to tide them over on their way home. The texts are explicit. They all ate and were fully, completely satisfied. And this brilliantly illustrates a key point from the Pilgrim Lutheran Church text. As they point out, the real miracle wasn't merely that everyone got a bite to eat. The miracle was that every single stomach was filled until they couldn't possibly want any more, and yet there was still an abundance left over. Christ's generosity and compassion are quite literally, always, infinitely greater than our human expectations. And check out this amazing hidden meaning in the numbers themselves. 5 loaves plus 2 fish equals 7. Throughout biblical literature, the number 7 represents completeness, fullness, and divine perfection. So what looked like a laughably pathetic, not enough to those panicked disciples, was actually already mathematically perfect and totally complete the second it was in God's hands. Seriously, just think about the pure economics of this miracle. You've got these tiny starting resources matched up against a massive crowd's need. And what's the result? A towering leftover abundance of exactly 12 baskets. Now, why 12? Well, remember, there were exactly 12 disciples who initially doubted the provision. Jesus made absolutely sure that every single man who looked at the situation and said, "It's impossible," ended up walking away carrying a heavy basket of physical proof that his grace is more than sufficient. Then, after everyone is completely stuffed, Jesus issues this fascinating command: gather up the leftover fragments so that nothing may be lost. Think about the deep psychological and spiritual comfort of that statement. The God of infinite, overflowing abundance is also the God who cares deeply about the broken pieces. He intentionally makes sure not a single fragment, and by extension not a single person, is ever wasted, overlooked, or left behind. Section 5. Anchoring your faith today. Finding peace and provision. We've seen how divine authority calms the absolute deadliest of storms, and how divine provision can turn a peasant's simple lunch into an all-you-can-eat feast for thousands of people. And today, so many individuals draw directly on these texts to practice declaring peace over their own lives, speaking faith into chaos. Actually saying out loud, "I declare peace over my storm," is an incredibly empowering affirmation. It reminds you that you are anchored by the exact same voice that commanded the winds and the raging waters to be completely still. Let's move to and see how this builds our practical takeaways for actually living out these miracles every single day. First, don't hide your seemingly inadequate resources. Bring whatever small offering you have forward. Trust that the ultimate provider, Jehovah Jireh, can and will satisfy your deepest spiritual hungers. Rest in the profound comfort that you are never, ever a lost fragment to Him. And when that anxiety inevitably rises, anchor your soul with those 3 powerful words: peace, be still. I really want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. I want you to look at the impossible math in your own life right now. What small offering, what 5 loaves, are you anxiously holding on to right now, terrified it won't be enough, that simply needs to be released into hands that are fully capable of the impossible? Thank you so much for exploring these incredible historical texts with me today. Keep seeking, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.